Hey everyone, Ethan Ainsworth here. I'm doing a review of Nightwing number 62 from the current run, Courtship of Owls. So, I like the direction that this book goes with the character of Richard Grayson. I understand why this could be insulting to longtime Nightwing fans. I totally get that, and if I were a Nightwing fan, consistently, I would definitely be frustrated by this. Because we just got him back as Nightwing only a year or two ago, and already they're taking him away from us again by making him forget who he is due to head trauma, brain trauma. So I totally get it from that perspective, but as somebody who hasn't read Nightwing consistently in quite a long time, I think this direction is interesting, and I enjoy Dan Jurgens' writing and portrayal of the character. This is not dissimilar, I would say, in tone from Mark Waid's Daredevil, in that he's not really the same character. He's not abiding by the same characteristics that he normally would. He's sort of a happy-go-lucky guy who's just trying to forget about his past. Not that it's very difficult with him due to his brain trauma. So he's calling himself Rick Grayson now, and he's no longer Nightwing. I'm not a big fan of the eye makeup, if I'm honest. I think it looks a little bit silly, the eye grease. It looks a little bit Arrow Season 1. I think it's a bit dumb, but the artwork is an excellent. I'm not going to try to pronounce Ronan's name, but you can look at it, figure it out for yourself. One thing I do hate, though, is I don't read many DC books right now, but one thing I do hate is, despite being the same price as a normal comic book, as a Marvel comic book, they have a much lower quality of paper. It's like the sort of stock they would use in the 1990s rather than the glossy paper that has become standardized in even indie comic books today. Despite the fact that this is supposed to be one of the major two comic book companies. But we meet some of the other characters who are Nightwings. So Nightwings basically, if you do guys remember Robins, or basically there were 50 Robins, and they were all working in the same area at the same time. So it's like a Batman Inc. style Robin situation. Anyway, it's kind of like that, but there's a bunch of Robins, and they all distinguish themselves via color of costume. And we find out that Robin, or Nightwing in this case, is sort of moved on with his life. He's met this woman, and they're obviously romantically involved. And I do kind of like the writing between these two characters. I mean, obviously you can't, they're not acted out, but there's still a sort of written chemistry that I think works rather well. I don't know that I would peg Dick Grayson as somebody who would just sort of abandon his family simply because he doesn't remember them. But maybe you could say despite the fact that he can't remember who he is, he's still he feels the pressure and the frustration of being part of the Bat family and living in Batman's shadow, and he just sort of wanted to remove himself from the equation, despite the fact that he doesn't actually remember being in the equation to begin with. You can see she's Google the younger version of Robin. Yeah, so this is the issue where he reveals his identity to her. I can't remember her name, if I'm honest, but I do like the character so far. I do plan on adding this to my pull list, but as of right now, I've just read the one issue. I'd like to say one thing this book does excellently is like I obviously haven't read Nightwing. I had no idea what was going on with the character at this time. I just wanted to pick up the book because I like Nightwing. I was looking to get back into it. Um, and I gotta say, the book did an excellent job of bringing me up to speed. I don't feel like I'm lost to any extent. I feel like, see, I think this has been going on with Nightwing for at least a few issues now, but this issue did a very good job of catching me up on what I missed, like an old Marvel book might do, where the whole situation is explained whilst the current story is going on as well, and it does a really good job of bringing me up and sort of making me feel like I could jump in at any point and not be lost. I do understand how that could be frustrating for new readers or old readers who know what's going on. They don't want to be reminded every 2 seconds what's going on. It's like in Mark Waid's Daredevil run, how there would be like a one-page origin and sort of dial a monologue that would bring you up to speed on Matt Murdock's life as it is right now. So if you want, you can skip it and you can just read the story because you already know all that, or you could just sort of read it and it's the same in every issue. And I think that's a terrific idea, and I wish Marvel Comics would do that today and sort of try to catch people up on what's going on. Do you remember an old like issues of Spectacular Spider-Man and stuff like that? If you open like the front cover, up here there would be like an origin for Peter Parker. I mean, everybody knows Spider-Man's origin today, but back in the 70s, 80s, and even not early 90s, people might not have known Spider-Man's origin. So I think it was good that they have like, oh, young science student Peter Parker was bitten by a radioactive spider, giving him incredible abilities, blah 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 blah, stuff like that. So I think this book sort of does a really good job of that. I don't feel that if I were a longtime reader, I'd want to deal with being reminded all the time. But it was convenient for me this time, being a noob to the sort of Nightwing lore as it is currently. But so basically, we find out that Richard is being stalked by his great-grandfather, who was, of course, a member of the Court of Owls. And the artwork is just incredible here. But if you're not familiar, if you haven't read Court of the Owls with Greg Capullo and God, well, I talk about this run all the time. Why can't I remember? Scott Snyder. You don't remember that run. Basically, the first story arc is the Court of the Owls, and in that story, Bruce Wayne reveals to Dick Grayson that he's sort of always been on the minds of the Court of Owls. He's always been like meant to be one of them, because in his family line, he comes from like a long line of owls, of talons, that is. And so he was sort of in their crosshairs to become the next Talon for the Court of Owls. And so we see a dialogue here between this new version of Lex Luthor, who looks a bit like a Zambo, or perhaps even Brainiac. And we see he's using this drone that looks like the headquarters to the Legion of Doom. I think that's a really cute reference. But yeah, we see like a hologram projection of Lex Luthor conversing with Talon, and that's where the story ends off. We get an ad for Wildcats as well, actually, which I didn't know was coming back. I thought once that series got canceled in New 52, they would probably not go back to those characters again for another 10 years. Because I don't think they've been tremendously relevant since the early 90s. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this review, and I would recommend, if you're not reading Nightwing, and you didn't read Grayson, and you don't really mind what's happening to the character to pick this up. Unfortunately, it is really sad though when something like this happens over and over to a character. I mean, everybody loved Grayson. Everybody thought that was a good series and an interesting change. But if I was reading Grayson and I was a Dick Grayson fan, I would be very upset about like this happening twice in such short a time. But evidently, the powers that be at DC Comics don't like don't like Nightwing to a terrific extent. But yeah, so thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys later.